Uh,
Good.
hey, yo, welcome back to the Boston Sports Brothers podcast. Another week, gentlemen. Good to see you. We just had a great conversation with Gayle Troiani. That interview is going to be a little bit later in the episode when we get to the Bruins part of things when we do around town. But we got a lot to get into, and we're going to start right off with college hoops. Gentlemen, let's set the table, starting going backwards in time like we did last week to the Sweet 16, covering those 2 days of games, and then we'll get into the weekend in the Elite Eight, what's set up for the Final Four starting next week. So the phone lines are open. Load them up, as the Big O would say.
Load them up.
Load them up.
I would say let's start with the Sweet 16. I think like overall there were some really dominating games that took place.
Yeah,
Looking at you, Alabama, and
Alabama
your
at
game against
BYU.
BYU and the record number of threes that came in there. And Florida also dominated there as well. But then there were also a number of games that were really close. That
Houston,
Texas
Purdue.
Tech Arkansas game
Oh yeah,
was
back and forth.
awesome. And as someone who was rooting for Coach Cal, just due to some UMass connections, heartbreaking to see them not have enough and lose in overtime. But between them, I think some of the other notable games, Michigan State beating Ole Miss, great job by Ole Miss, by the way. Like, want to give a tip of the cap to them. They're a team that I don't think a lot of people had going this far, and they went on a great run. Michigan State, though, it finally caught up with them later. But that team just cannot get started in the first half of a game. So I don't know if any of you guys are degenerates like me, but
Oh yeah.
I voted the under for Michigan State every
Oh,
single
did you?
game since the first round of two. And let's say I was reaping some rewards these last couple this
Well,
last weekend.
Biggie, I got absolutely hosed on that last three at the end of the game. Well,
Oh,
that's from the other day, but oh my God, I mean, that was brutal when that three went in, and I was just like, I got my. We were at dinner. Tay was like, "Is
Bad
everything
beat.
okay?" And I was like, "No,
no, it's not
no,
okay.
not good,
I'm
not
pretty
good."
far from okay.
Pretty far from okay. I thought the Houston Purdue game was
That was excellent too.
the game of the Sweet 16. That inbound play at the end was fantastic, and not a surprise that Purdue put up a good fight. They were impressive in that game that I saw them against McNeese. Fellas, anyone else? Any takeaways from the Sweet 16 before we move ahead to the Elite Eight?
One other game, Texas Tech defeating Arkansas, 85 to 83. I was really hoping Arkansas and Calipari could pull through in that one. It just seemed like they kind of had the momentum and were kind of like maybe not a Cinderella team, obviously, but like definitely a 10 seed going to the Elite Eight would have been really cool. And didn't happen, but still a great game and a great watch.
Well, and I
Great
think too,
game.
like they're they're
That
they're
slipped
a
away.
weird. They were a weird 10 seed because they had a lot of talent that transferred from Kentucky, which we all know is a blue blood program that Calipari was the coach of. That
SEC,
Kentucky had
SEC.
kind of underperformed for the last 2 years. So like while they didn't play up to like where I think we all expected them to be this year, I'm not going to bet against Coach Cal when the tournament time starts. So good for him. That team will be back, and I think they'll be poised to go on a deep run again next year.
And
I have
again,
one.
I'm not gonna sit here and pretend like, I know a lot about college basketball because I don't, but I do enjoy watching the game and I'll tell you what, this weekend there were a lot of good games to watch and they were really competitive and it was I think it's all due to the NIL, the transfer portal, players kind of having that option to choose where they want to go to some extent. We're seeing a lot more what was I gonna say? A lot more competition in these games.
Yeah, I
Yeah, you're
think
you're seeing the top seeds winning out. I mean, no, I don't want to jump ahead. I mean, we have to talk about the Elite Eight, but like you said, Sam, we're seeing the top talent, the top teams just they're head and shoulders above the rest.
Josh, I
yeah,
don't think you're skipping
Breakfast.
ahead. Let's talk about the Elite Eight. I think
Yeah, let's get right into it,
let's
man.
give the competition committee like their due because you want to know what? I think this is might be like the competition committee's wet dream. They had literally in the Elite Eight all four number one seeds, three number
Hmm.
two seeds. Oh, and the lone seed that wasn't a two or a one was a three. They did a fantastic job getting the top teams into the top position of this tournament. And you want to credit to the teams for playing and actually doing what they need to do. But the competition committee really did an excellent job of just like making
Seeding.
this bracket
Leading it up,
even
yeah.
and competitive. So just want to give kudos to them before we dive in.
Absolutely. Let's set the table. Two final nuggets from the Sweet 16 before we do Elite Eight. That Duke Arizona game was awesome.
Great game.
Caleb Love did everything he could to keep his team in that game, just hitting
Yep.
ridiculous shots. So
He's got future Celtic written all
They
over him.
they almost came back at one
they
point. I
did.
mean, I was
They
watching
made it a great game.
that game was a 20-point spread at one point, and they were making a real push at one point.
And then the other game is Florida defeating Maryland, and really the sideshow that went on with Kevin Willard, who, 48 hours later, however many hours since that game took place, is now the head coach of the Villanova Wildcats. He pulled a Bill Parcells, fellas. He pulled a Bill Parcells. Let's go into an important game and already sign a contract with another team. Unbelievable. But all right, moving right ahead to the Elite Eight, where Saturday we had a few games, and what's set up here where 4 number 1 seeds have moved on to the Final Four. So takeaways from the 4 games over the weekend, boys. Once again, load them up.
Domination.
Yeah, I mean,
domination.
Plotty, we were watching the Florida Gators Texas Tech game together.
That was good.
Yeah. That was an excellent game. Texas Tech
I feel like they had a little bit of a lead there for a little
They
bit.
were in control till the end.
Florida
I thought
was,
so, yeah.
Florida was behind
It was
at some
questionable.
points.
Like I said, this
3 minutes
weekend was a
left to
great
go.
weekend of competitive basketball, man.
And that kid on
They're
there,
back and forth.
what's that kid's name on Florida? The
Walter
point guard?
Clayton.
Clayton had an unbelievable game.
That was
totally
is
brought them.
Is he their shooting guard?
I think
Yeah,
it's their point.
he's the guy
guard.
who just looks like Steph Curry putting up shots like off one
Black
leg
hair.
and like just
Yeah,
dagger threes after dagger.
Yeah,
Like,
that kid. Okay,
that
yeah.
was
That was wild.
unbelievable to see some of the shot making that he made. So the Florida Texas Tech game was definitely the game of the weekend. Duke just continues to roll. I mean, Cooper and Knipple. Knipple's just such a funny name to say too. There's a lot that you can do with
Their
Knipple.
center's good too.
Maruach.
Yeah.
Oh,
He
big boys.
is.
Yeah.
He
He can move.
He can move. He's athletic, and I feel like he's the unsung hero of that team. Like there's not a ton of attention that he receives because of Flag and Knipple and some of the guard play that they have at Duke. But Maruach is just like on another level. That guy defends the rim and is a lot. Yeah. But the Duke rolls over Bama, and Bama had a historic game in the Sweet 16, 25 threes, kind of playing Missoula killer whale offense style. But Bama goes down, and then yesterday, Houston just kind of throttles and suffocates Tennessee, and Auburn takes care of Michigan State once again.
Just because Michigan State couldn't get going in the first half, they're their own worst enemy, and like it's a shame because I really love that Michigan State team, and I actually
anytime Minnesota program.
He's just an amazing coach, and just like every single time I hear him talk, he's like one of those guys where like I would love to have played for someone like him because he just seems like he's not just like a great motivator, great coach, but just a great person.
Yeah, Izzo's great coaching matchup here in the Final Four. As we were saying our prayers there, we got 4 members of the tribe leading all the teams.
3 out of 4.
I think it's 4. I think it's 4.
Samson's not he's not a member of the tribe.
Kelvin
3 out of 4.
Sampson.
Everyone else is though.
Well, he can be honorary if he wants to be.
How's everyone's brackets looking?
Great.
I mean,
I got my Final Four in there.
I have 3 out of 4. So I'm pretty good.
I got 4. I got all 4. I got 4 seeds left. I'm pretty sure.
4 of the all Final Four.
Go check the post on Instagram.
Oh, yeah, that's a post.
I'm checking right now.
Look at the brackets. I had Duke and Florida, but the other two, no bueno for me. That'll do it on this Elite 8 and Sweet 16 recap. Sets up for full number 1 seed Final Four taking place Saturday. We got Auburn and Florida, and then Duke versus Houston. So championship game will then be on Monday night. So
March Madness moving into April. Don't you love it?
Right. Quick time capsule. Don't forget, Joe Missoula took out Boogie Cousins and John Wall's, was it Kentucky?
Yes.
Kentucky
when he was
team.
at West Virginia.
Remember that.
Just real quick, before we move on, who you guys got winning the whole championship right now? Not what you got on your bracket. Who do you, in your heart of hearts, feel like is going to win? One word answer, go around, everyone start.
Duke.
Florida.
Duke.
All right.
So 4 Duke, 1 Florida.
We'll come back to
Duke,
it.
1 Gator. I mean, we'll see. I think if it does set up to be
Gator.
If it does set up to be that matchup, it will be quite honestly one of the best probably the best player against the best team so far in this tournament. So we're going to keep talking hoops, and we're going to shift our attention to the Green, who have a game that's underway right now versus Memphis. And but we're going to recap the week that was. Big E, take it away on the C's.
Yeah, again, same story as the last couple of weeks. 3 games, 3 dominations. I think the biggest story that kind of came out of any of the games that were played earlier this week was the fear that Tatum went down in the Sacramento game, where Sabonis got into his airspace. Old friend Zaza Pachulia coined this back in the playoffs, a couple years ago when he, got was it Steph or was it KD? But I can't remember. But he basically got in the airspace or maybe it was Kawhi. He got in someone's airspace and totally ruined that person for the playoffs. And the NBA, to their credit, took note, changed it. Thank goodness Tatum, got back. He was actually on with New Heights, the Kelsey podcast, the day after the injury, and was like, "Listen, I'm young. I'll be okay." And he has played since then. So I think our initial fears of oh shit, the season's cooked. And I don't mean that Jason Tatum, he is that good that if he's not on the team that I worry that do they have enough juice to win? And that's not a knock on the other guys. That's just how good Jason Tatum is. So that's really the big takeaway. There really wasn't much else that's going on there. It's just about being healthy and just making sure that you are ready for the playoffs, which are rapidly approaching.
Well, I just want to touch on the Phoenix Suns games. I mean, that's the perfect example of Jason being out and other people stepping up. I mean, they had Porzingis pouring in 30 points, JB with 24. I mean, Sam Hauser came off the bench, 11 points. I mean, that's what we want to see. We want to see other guys kind of take that. And not only that, but the Suns didn't even look at a lead one time in the game. I mean, the Celtics completely dominated from the get-go on that. And to see them do that without Tatum, come on, let's get these last games finished. Let's get nice and healthy. Let's get to the playoffs. Let's get that first series started.
Maybe Kevin Durant will be on the Celtics next year.
Nah, I don't want him on the Celtics. Let him stay out fucking west with all those fucking other people.
Ship him out west.
Keep him out west. Just keep him out west. Just stay out west.
Yeah. The shipping company is closed.
Might be shipping someone else out west, maybe from the old ball and back team there. That plays on.
Hold on.
Should we transition to the Red Sox?
A little.
There's no way you're gonna be able to trade that contract, my man.
No, I know.
But a few final nuggets on the Celtics here, who are on their road trip. Going for a 6-0 road trip with a win tonight, they'd accomplished that, and so that hasn't been done in the NBA this season. So that'd be
historic road team. Historic.
Where are my road dogs out?
That's going to be very, very, very important come playoff time when they're probably potentially going to have to go against the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Luke Cornett would be barking up and down the court. Don't worry.
No, I'm saying I want
to see him put up 16 and 16.
They're a better road team, so it might bode well for them against Cleveland. And if it gets that far, which I love, you love to see it.
Yeah, Cornette's been barking like a dog. Cornette's had a really great season. We were talking a lot about Nimi Keita at the beginning of the season. Cornette has completely flipped the script
up, man.
Has become an incredibly reliable backup center.
First and second unit.
Yeah, so he's been a great revelation, and this as we were saying, the playoffs are ahead. Health is wealth in the playoffs. The Cavs, while still being a fantastic team, have been beatable as of late. So you are going to have to go on the road at some point in the playoffs and steal some games and put yourself in.
You guys are assuming that the Cavs are going to win out and make it to the Eastern Conference Finals, which you want to know what? The way that they've been playing recently, I'm not going to go out on a limb and say, oh, let's automatically put them there. They can be beat. And you know, maybe someone like another team that's out there, maybe and I think unfortunately for them, because of the Damian Lillard situation, which is a shame. I did feel like Milwaukee was making some headway, and unfortunately now I just don't think they have the juice. But I'm still not going to automatically put Cleveland in the Eastern Conference Finals. Neither am I going to put the Celtics there. We all got to earn it, right? So there's no guarantee that we will face them in that part of the playoffs.
Yeah. Let's just worry about our own series.
Exactly.
Got to be earned one series at a time, one game at a time, and don't look too far ahead. Season wraps up 2 weeks, and then late April we get into the playoff series. So we'll be keeping our eyes on Celtics playoffs ahead. But now we're gonna take ourselves over to well, soon
David
Fenway Park.
Ortiz
They're down in
Way.
Baltimore right now and coming off a series in Texas. But before we begin, it's been a very long time here on the Boston Sports Brothers podcast before we've had this segment sort of come to us. But the penalty box is returning here, and Krasner, unfortunately, there's a 2-minute minor that's got to come your way for the episode last week, and
Hey,
the pillow just took you in and took you home. So we're
I
gonna
was all
mute you
amped
for
up.
30.
First day of classes.
It's all right. The penalty
Come on.
box. The penalty box. We have to be fair and balanced here on the show. We have to be fair and balanced. So
All right, let me mute myself. Ready?
All right, time it.
There we go.
So good.
This is
No,
awesome.
I'm just kidding. I'm not even muted.
He's motherfucking me from behind the mic. All right, Kraz. Well, it's you've successfully served your penalty. You're now back on the ice. We're back here at full strength. Get into it with the Sox. It's certainly been an interesting start of the season.
Let's talk about Devers first, because what the fuck is going on with that guy? I mean, just 0 for 19 with 17 Ks at this point. I mean,
no.
You got to move him down. You got to move him down the order, and you got to bring up Abreu. I mean, the first game was I dubbed it the Abreu game because I mean he was just all over the place. But go ahead, Josh.
I don't know, like, not gonna take a victory lap, but like, this is exactly what we said was what was going to happen probably 2 or 3 weeks ago. Is we saw controversy. He didn't take anything seriously. He wasn't playing. It was getting close to the season, and he had still yet to play. And like, it was just a perfect storm over the last 3-4 weeks.
What's the one thing that's off?
His bat speed, and he can't get there because he's just not ready yet. And he just took everything for granted over the last 2 to 3 weeks when he couldn't just coexist with a perfect signing, Bregman, who has been a team player, competent, great third baseman. Defense has just been on point, hits the ball. Like, I don't get why someone can't coexist with that person. It's just unbelievable to me. So I'm not going to take a victory lap, but like, it's early, and I think we all agree Devers will turn it around. But like, what are you doing, dude? These games cost the same amount that they do in September. A win's a win and a loss is a loss come playoff time.
Yeah, I mean, we might not see him tomorrow. I don't know. Cora might give him a day off. I mean, no one said anything. No one in the media at least said anything about it. But at this point, what do you do? I mean, I don't know. You can push him down further in the lineup, but you do that and you risk hurting his ego, which we already know is pretty easy to penetrate.
It's already fragile.
So, yeah,
I mean,
so
it's a Devers issue, but I mean, at this point now, the Sox are 1-4, and it's looking like it's a Red Sox issue. I mean, they've had 55 strikeouts in the last 5 games, trying to swing for the fences, and it's like they're ignoring.
Maybe they should have listened to Jim Rice.
That's what I was about to say. They're ignoring Jim Rice's advice, who may not have been the best hitting coach in his time, but like that guy knows what he's doing. Like, what is happening with this team right now where they're unprepared for the start of the season, and now we're 1-4, and I feel like it's doom and gloom again, and I hope they can pull themselves out of the pit.
It's early.
So I just want to touch on the fact that the pitching that we did go up against in Texas, these guys weren't duds. Okay, no. We're going up against Nate Eovaldi, we were going to sign him in the offseason, but something happened. So he had a little bit of a chip on his shoulder. What's that?
Isn't Texas a favorite to win their division potentially?
I mean, they won 2 years ago, so I mean, they kind of always are.
Like, they're a good team.
Al Leiter's son, Jack Leiter, who played at Vanderbilt with Kumar Rocker, who just absolutely throws the shit out of the ball. I mean, the kid's an absolute baller. And then you have Jacob deGrom. I mean, you had someone in between him, but then you have Jacob deGrom the next day. And I mean, and then you have the Red Sox killer, Adolis Garcia. Every single one of those games, Adolis Garcia won the game for the Texas Rangers, except for game 1, where Willie Abreu had 2 home runs, 1 for each kid.
You can't blame the Red Sox pitching, because they have kept them in this each game.
It's the best.
They're not 10-run games. It's 3-2, 4-1, 4-3.
Yep.
Even today, 8-5. Like, they put up 5 runs. Like, you put up 5 runs, you're typically winning most games.
The early portion of the offense, your 1 through 5 needs to start to get going, and that starts with Devers. I did see things kind of start to open up a little bit. Jaron Duran hit for a triple. That was kind of big. That was one of his first big hits. See what that does carrying him forward. For me, it's just, I want to get these guys back home. I want to get on an even playing field. I want to get the season going, and I just want it to get warmer.
So but the one thing I'm a little worried about Devers, and it's way too early to tell this. I think maybe come 2 or 3 weeks or a month we can revisit this. But I hope he's not the type of person, player, star that needs to play the field to be able to use his bat. And that's what I'm a little afraid of because he's never really been in this situation where he has a DH role where you get 40 minutes in between each at bat where you have to go into the cage and think about why you're getting, striking out, every single at bat and you're not playing the field where you can make a play and feel good about yourself. You have nothing to feel good about. So you can make a flashy play in the field and all of a sudden that could turn everything around. And I'm really, really nervous that he's gonna really, really just fall from that, and it just could be bad. But we'll see. Time will tell. It's just way too early. But I hope the fielding doesn't affect his bat.
You know what I would say to you on that, Josh, is get David Ortiz on the phone and get David Ortiz in his ear. You got the Dominican connection there. You got one of the greatest DHs of all time. And you want to, maybe Devers does want to play the field, but you want to what, dude, based on the circumstance, you got to do what's best for the team. And what's best for the team at this moment is for you to be a DH. So you might as well pick the brain of one of the best DHs of all time, who I know you have a great personal relationship with. He will help you get your head out of your ass and get you performing.
Or you learn first, he could learn a different position. I don't know if he could play first base. I have no idea. I don't know if it's probably maybe if he took the spring seriously.
Send Casas to Pluto. I'm all for that too.
If you took the spring seriously, then you could flip it back and forth with first base with Casas and DH. I don't know, but that goes back to 3 or 4 weeks ago. It's just there's so many things that could have happened, but and it's too early to tell whether it's going to be a crutch or not. But we'll see. He's gonna have to break out of it somehow, some way.
And one guy that has been going off is Wilyer Abreu. I've been pleasantly surprised by his bat. I mean, he was good last year, but he really won that game for them against the Texas that one game. And I think we were having a little bit of a debate on our group chat saying I was saying this is increasing his trade value like crazy. Like let's trade this guy for another ace. And then it seemed like a few of you guys were more on the sense of give this guy more playing time. Let's put him out there and use his bat to help the Red Sox this season. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we got him in a trade. It was a great pick, and he's young. He won a Gold Glove in his rookie year. He should have been in conversations for Rookie of the Year last year, but he wasn't. And he's a power bat, and not to mention that. But probably no one here knows this, but he was also sick, just like Roman Anthony, and he lost 20 pounds. And look what he did to the ball. I mean, that was a fucking moonshot. Both of them. And I mean, the other one just got out of the park in a heartbeat, but the other one was just such a hard hit ball. I would, it's tough to see him go. And the reason it's tough to see him go is because in the back of your mind, you're like, okay, say Don Rafael is signed for however many years for $100 million. And he's supposed to be your utility guy. And then you have Roman Anthony, who just hit 2 home runs down in the minors. And it's like, well, you can't keep this guy down in AAA. He's got to come back up. So now you have a clogged infield because you also have Yoshida, who's, he's warming up his arm so he can actually get out and play. So now you have a clogged outfield. So now what do you do? Yeah. It's a good position to be in, personally. There's a lot of skilled bats. I just think we're real cold right now, and just we gotta warm things up and get back to what we were doing in spring training, because we were top 3 in the Grapefruit League.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. It's been a poor start to the season here for the Sox, but the pitching has been good. The bats are really the issue, and obviously Devers is his own sort of situation in combination with that. So look, the best part about baseball is you have every day is an opportunity to change the narrative and to have it go one way or the other. So tomorrow is an off day because it was the home opener for the Orioles today. So it's an off day tomorrow. Then they finish out that series against Baltimore on Wednesday and Thursday. And then they're back at Fenway for the home opener against St. Louis on Friday. So
hey, all it takes is for them to get hot at a certain point of the season and turn it around. We're 5 games in. I'm certainly not going to sit here and be doom and gloom and say the season's in the shitter, but I do think we got to at least get some wins on the board over the next week. Yeah. I don't think that's unrealistic.
bad
No.
start, but lots of room for improvement as we've discussed here. So a team that looks to be improving and getting things in order to have a successful offseason and head into the season with new aspirations is the New England Patriots. So J-Matt, some big things happened in Patriots land over the last week. Take it away.
Yeah, so the person Stefan Diggs, who made a visit to Foxborough a couple weeks ago, who left without a deal, the Patriots ended up signing him actually for a 3-year deal worth $69 million.
Sweet.
Includes a $26 million
Nice.
guaranteed signing
Nice.
bonus.
No, Gronk smiling.
Nice contract.
So he is our number one wide receiver, which probably he could be a number two on most teams. I completely agree with that. He did have 50 catches in 8 games last year, so he was on pace for probably 80 plus balls. But keep in mind, he was with Nico Collins in Houston, who was he's a clear number one wide receiver.
Tank
So
Dell.
and Tank
And
Dell,
Tank
yeah.
Dell.
So
Pre-injury, yeah.
it's a good signing. I know we were poo-pooing it a couple weeks ago, but I think in the grand scheme of things, if he truly is ready for a week one, like they say he is, I'm okay with it. But I'm just nervous that he's not going to be the explosive Stefan Diggs coming off the ACL that we're used to seeing, and I hope he can help the team right now because that's what we need. So that's my little hesitancy of them signing him, but I want your take on all of that. Open the
Well,
floor.
with ACL injuries, and I mean, I bet Gabe can attest to this working in the field, it's more of a mental thing. Once you have your surgery and you do your rehab and you're good to go, it's more of a mental thing where you're afraid that you're going to do the same thing by making the same repetitive movements. So I don't, you never know. We don't know what's going to happen with the season. I do know with ACL repairs, they tend to be pretty good. And typically for the most part, it's a mental thing that players really need to get over where they feel really comfortable with being able to make that cut motion.
And I guess the one good thing about the signing with Diggs is he's a bit of a mental case, so he might just go out there on the field and completely forget about it when he's playing, and it might not really affect him because he just is that type of dude. He's literally
So
that dude.
Gresh,
So
so I have a question for Gresh on the pod. Does Diggs bring the swag to the team?
Oh hell yeah! I think he
I
definitely
think so.
does.
I do
think
too.
he definitely does.
100%,
I think a
100%.
couple quick thoughts here on the signing. First of all, like there was no number one wide receiver that was out there that the Patriots could have. And I think they found the best of what was left in Stephon Diggs. And candidly, if Diggs hadn't gotten injured, he would have been viewed maybe not as a number one, but clearly as a guy that a lot of teams would have been
1A.
interested in. And I think a lot of teams were disinterested because of the injury. And I think the Patriots, based on where their wide receiver room is before the signing, really they weren't in a position to really kind of choose. So I think they got the best that was left. And I think a couple things I like about the signing. It is very incentive laden deal. So he is only signed for what, 26 million, right? The other thing, that's across 3 years. The other thing, number two, that I really like, number two, is he's a professional. He's been in the league for a long time. There is a young wide receiver room. You take out Kendrick Bourne, who I think is the most veteran of the rest of the guys. Kayshon Boutte's in his third year. He's entering his third year. Polk's in his second. Like, there's a lot of talent that's in that room. They're just young. So learning from a guy who's, been a Pro Bowler or a guy who's been on some teams that have made the playoffs, I think is going to be beneficial. And then my last and final point, number three, is that dude is going to get up to play the Buffalo Bills twice a year, and you better watch out whoever is on defense for the Buffalo, because he is going to try and put up 200 yards and 3 touchdowns against you. And you want to know what? Drake May is going to encourage him to do that. So I don't think that it's necessarily a bygone conclusion from where we are right now, and there's a lot that needs to happen between now and the season, that we're going to get absolutely smoked by Buffalo Bills twice. I think we're actually going to play them pretty tight this year, and I wouldn't be surprised if we take 1 out of 2 against them. It's most likely going to be at home, but I think adding someone like Stephon Diggs gives me some credibility that this team can actually, I don't want to say go the distance because they're not there yet, but they can be competitive against really good teams.
He's the type
I
of
agree.
person that is perfect for Drake May too, because when we all know Drake May likes to throw the long ball. He's whether it's a conservative or a risky throw, he likes going for that. And Stephon Diggs is a burner, and he goes for the ball. He'll fight for the ball. So that's someone you want to have on your team. I think it will help Drake May in the long run.
When was the last time we had an actual receiver on the team like this?
Yeah, seriously,
Julian Edelman.
Edelman.
Yeah,
Edelman, definitely. I also agree with you guys. I like the signing. He looked fresh to death coming into to sign his contract with like the Patriot colored rugby on. Yeah, that was sick.
I like this polo.
I agree with Eric. Like, he brings a certain type of professionalism into that wide receiver room. Even though he might spout off at the mouth or be a little sporadic with his personality. He definitely brings a professionalism. He's been in the league for a long time now, so he has experience. Another little interesting tidbit, Kendrick Bourne on his TikTok was seen hanging out with Ashton Genty this past weekend, working out with him, doing a lot of TikTok dances together. So for what that means, I don't know if that number 4 pick. I've heard Genty is another generational type player that is hard to pass up on. So
Scatabo. You better draft that kid, whether it's a second round or third round. I don't care. I want that kid on the Patriots.
That 4th pick.
What about there's a tackle out of Boston College who's projected to go in the 3rd round, I think.
Ozzy.
Oh, Vrabel. Yeah. Vrabel was I saw that.
He was at their pro day. Vrabel was
I saw that.
A little nugget around the NFL that could affect what you're talking about right now is that we didn't talk about last week that happened was Russell Wilson signed with the New York Giants. Also, which was kind of weird because they had just signed Mr. Crablegs, Jameis Winston.
All you can eat, but I'm taking him with me.
So yeah, I thought that was a little interesting because they're clearly probably not gonna draft a quarterback now. It seems
they will.
Yeah, okay.
They will.
So no.
So
Adam Schefter has reported that ownership is still very much focused on a long-term answer at quarterback. They have $14 million, I believe, tied up in those 2 quarterbacks with Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston. And you want to know what I have also heard is if they believe that a quarterback of the future is available for them at 3, they are going to take them. And what they might do is they might move someone like Jameis Winston to a team that's quarterback needy for number 2. Because eventually, let's be honest, there's going to be someone that gets injured in preseason. It happens every year. Okay. And you want to know what? The Giants could be in a really good position where they could trade Jameis Winston, give Russell Wilson the starting job, because let's be honest, they signed Russell Wilson to start, and then have whoever they end up drafting at 3, who would most likely be Shedeur Sanders, because I think we all think Cam Ward is going to go as the first quarterback taken. But I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that they are officially out of the quarterback market because of like the fact they have 2 quarterbacks that are both within their 30s that are not long-term answers for that franchise.
Well, you know what, Commissioner Reed, maybe you can rig the draft so that the Giants definitely take a quarterback and Travis Hunter lands in our laps, because that's what I'm hoping.
Just give me Abdul Carter, give me Travis Hunter.
Abdul Carter,
and the best part about all this. The best part about all this talk and all this speculation is nobody knows, and in a few weeks, probably in about a month, we will know. We're gonna know what's going on. And
I know we got a lot to go between now and then, but let's just say Abdul Carter and Travis Hunter are off the board at 4. Are you guys sticking with the pick, or are you moving back?
T-Rex, baby. Give me the T-Rex.
I'm moving back.
Depending on it depends on depends on your haul. But
I'm moving back. I want that tackle from Oregon over T-Rex.
Well, isn't it lovely that we have Karen Garigian on in 2 weeks to do a full draft preview where we can bring up all the names and all the people and all the ducklings from Oregon
and all the arm lengths
from Boston College
hand lengths
and your 32.5 inches that you can stick up where it doesn't shine and all that bullshit that we're going to get into in 2 weeks with Karen.
He was 33 at his pro day.
Yeah.
One quick other little nugget is the Patriots released Juwan Bentley from the team. So this team is a clear direction. They don't care if you've been a veteran for the team for 6, 7, 8 years. If they don't think you can bring value to this team, they're going to cut you.
It is a new identity.
Coach Vrabel pulling the strings. And
Juwan Bentley, Super Bowl 53 champion.
Joe Cardona.
He was a great captain for the team. But it's clear that Vrabel's
going
in a different direction because he's getting rid of all the former captains. So it's a new era in Patriots land right now.
Big time.
Yeah, I will say also credit to the Patriots. They waited for the dude to get healthy before they cut him. And you want to make sure that if you're going to be released, that you at least have an opportunity to catch on with someone else. And
same with Andrews.
I think both of those guys will catch on somewhere else if they decide they want to keep their career going. More so with Bentley. I think Andrews might have to decide if he wants to keep playing or if he wants to retire. But Juwan Bentley definitely has more years left if he chooses to keep playing.
Tackling machine.
Joe Cardona remains the lone Patriots player tied to any of the Super Bowl
Yeah.
wins that is still on the roster.
Sad.
So
It's insane.
shout out to service member Navyman Joe Cardona. And that's going to do it for Around Town. We had our Long Bruins segment with Gayle. So we'll get into all the Bruins items with Gayle, so you can go listen to that part of the episode. Heyo, and welcome back to the Boston Sports Brothers podcast. Fully loaded show this evening. Gentlemen, how are you?
Doing well.
Hey,
doing?
good evening,
We're rocking and
everybody.
rolling, baby.
Excellent. And more importantly, we are thrilled to be joined by editorial content producer at NESN, Gayle Troiani, who, if you've followed us on Twitter, you've seen some interactions that we've had with Gayle. And a couple weeks ago, obviously, Nikita Zadorov had a few comments after the game, and I commented that the Bruins hate their goalie, and Gayle respectfully disagreed. And we had an open invitation for Gayle to join us here on the podcast to further that conversation and talk all things Bruins with her, for that matter, and things that are going on in the hockey world. So, Gayle, before we dive into that, how are you doing tonight? Thank you so much for joining us. And if there's anything else that you want to tell the people about your background and how you got into this role that you're at NESN, we'd love to start there, and then we'll dive into all the hockey talk.
Hey guys, thank you for having me, by the way, and for the open invitation. I appreciate it. As far as where I came from, I went to Northeastern University and covered women's hockey there while I was there, and then started covering the Lowell Devils for the Lowell Sun way back when, which they're not there anymore, obviously. And then I started working for NESN 2 years ago, right before the historic season for the Bruins. I did the playoffs before that. So I've been working at NESN for 2 years, mainly covering the Bruins, but also doing some Celtics, Red Sox, Patriots, Fleet, pretty much all the sports.
Excellent. And yeah, if you haven't checked out Gayle's work on NESN.com, definitely head over there. And almost every story I feel like I came across has Gayle attached to it. So she's doing a lot of great work over at NESN. And as we mentioned, so Gayle, let's dive into this conversation a little bit more about the Bruins and Swayman and the whole situation. So I think where my opinion came from in that comment was, and hate's probably not the best word, but as we know in the social media sphere, sometimes you say things to get the people going a little bit. But I think there is a strong disdain for Jeremy Swayman in the locker room. And I'll give a few reasons as to why I think that. And I think it goes back to, honestly, last off season, where he was on the Mark Lewis podcast and had a few comments that seemed to come across as, the business side of things for him was super important, and that he was going to try and take the towel and squeeze it for as much money as it's worth in the contract situation, which we all know about and how that unfolded both publicly and sort of behind the scenes. I think the beginning of the Bruins season and what happened with Montgomery and some of the situation there had somewhat to do with Swayman and some of the comments that Monty had. And just overall, I think the Bruins have tried to press every button that they can this season to make things go the right way. And when Jeremy Swayman is out there, it just doesn't feel like they have the legs or the energy or the wherewithal to sort of be giving it their all. And I think there's a stark difference when Korpisalo's in there. So from me, that is my sort of take, and definitely want to hear what your thoughts are. And then we'll let everybody else chime in, because I'm sure they're having their own thoughts as well.
So I saw that podcast, actually wrote about it. He did talk about his business degree and everything else, and he talked about setting the market and how important it was for him to build for the future for players, not just for himself. So he did 100% talk about that. He's not the first NHL player to say something like that, and he won't be the last. I think that his teammates play the same way in front of him as they do Korpisalo. I think it's been evident in certain games. I think that if you look at everything that's gone on with this team this entire year, yes, he missed training camp, and that put him behind the eight ball, which then put the team behind the eight ball. But I don't believe that his teammates look at him and blame him for it. I don't think that they blame him for the season that they're having. Because if they're blaming him for the season that they're having, then they need to blame Brad Marchand. because he couldn't come to a contract extension and he got traded. You know what I mean? It was more important for him to set his market value. Now, has Brad Marchand earned it? Oh, 100%. After giving how many years to the Bruins? Yes, he's 100% earned it. But it's the same thing. It's the same thing. They both set their market value at a certain level. And the Bruins, yes, they met with Jeremy Swayman. They couldn't keep both goaltenders. We knew that. They both wanted to play 90% of the games. You're not going to play that way for going forward. They kept the younger of the goaltenders. So I don't think that I don't think that the teammates hate him at all. I just think that this team is broken this year. I think this roster is broken, and I think that they have a lot of work to do in the offseason to get back to where they were.
Undoubtedly. Fellas, jump in. Go
Yeah,
ahead,
Gayle. Go ahead, Dave.
Derek.
No, I was just gonna say, Gayle, I agree with you. I think like the blame for the season has to start with the front office, right? It's gonna start with Don. It's gonna start with Cam. They put themselves in a position where they traded Ullmark before they had Swayman signed on the dotted line. They gave up all the leverage. I don't understand why they waited, why they couldn't have waited until, they had someone on they had him signed before they traded him. I don't know. That was like the biggest perplexing move to me of the offseason. It really seemed like it really elongated the contract discussions. It took away the urgency and it gave Swayman all the leverage. So that to me was the biggest mess up of the offseason. I mean, I think, obviously the roster itself had a lot of issues as well, but that in itself seemed like set everyone behind the eight ball.
I'm not sure I agree with that they needed to wait to trade Allmark because they also had to get a return for Allmark. And that was part of it. And when you're in those negotiations, especially where Allmark had I forget how many teams he had as a no movement clause. He had to waive it to go to Ottawa. There was a lot of different factors. So I think that we forget as if we take off our fandom eyeglasses and look at it from the business aspect of it, Sweeney only had so much time to move Allmark. And then to get the Swayman deal, a lot of it has to do with his agent. You have to remember who his agent is.
Louis Gross.
Right. And, like the fact that Johnny Gaudreau held out, you know what I mean? Like there's so many different history factors to this agent. And obviously Swayman put his trust in him. And from what Swayman has said in front of the camera and even sometimes behind the camera, he was not involved in any of the conversations. He really wasn't. He left it up to the Bruins and his agent. Whether his agent brought every single deal to him, you have to believe that ethically he would, but I'm not sure that he did because he didn't bring all the deals to Johnny Gaudreau.
And
he didn't bring all the deals to William Nylander.
Right. And we did talk about that in past podcasts as well. The point that I want to make is that, like you said, Gayle, Ullmark, the deal kind of was on his terms. It sounded like he was asked to go other places. I think LA might have been another destination that they were trying to trade him to, and he may have ex-nayed that one. So I guess when they struck a deal that they liked with Ottawa, it made sense that they just kind of went with it and kind of went on to figure the Swayman part afterwards. I kind of get where you're coming from in that sense. But another thing you mentioned is that the players in front of Swayman did not blame him for his performance. But do you think Swayman on the back end was blaming his defenseman or the team in front of him?
I'm not sure that he was blaming the team or his defenseman in front of him. I think there was a lot of miscommunication this year because the fact that, again, he missed camp. So he, missing camp, yeah, he was getting his reps at BU with the Terriers, but it's a lot different than getting your reps with your own team in front of you, and then you lose Lindholm fairly early in the season. And McAvoy's in and out of the lineup with his injuries. You're getting to nose the door off. Parker Wotherspoon is really, in and out of the lineup. PIKE is, he's still there. Carlos still there. But you're still building this trust and relationship with the team in front of you. And it wasn't just the defenseman, too. I mean, there's a lot of new forwards in front of him as well. Right. And then you have a new coach on top of that. Yeah, they still have goalie Bob, but now you go from Montgomery to Sacco. And so I think that's a lot of different factors and him missing camp. And again, that was, and Sweeney said, that was Jeremy's right to say, I'm not coming to camp without a contract.
And
So to me, the biggest disappointment for Swayman has been when they were making a playoff push, or they were making a push, assumingly to try for the playoffs. They were 20 and 14. I'm not sure what they're 2014, I think, in four, the end of December. And if you have a goalie that's making what the highest paid goalie in the league, or one of the top three, you need him to stay on your head. And he went what 3-6 in January, record with 3.39 goals against. So that's unexcusable, especially when you're in January, when you need those points and you're just losing 6 straight games. So to me, the excuse of him not being ready and not holding out in camp, it's January. Like, he's played at that point, he's played 20 plus games. He should be in a groove, and that's where, to me, it all fell apart for the Bruins. Where I was most disappointed in Swayman, where that's where he should be earning his money.
Okay, but if you look at the goals that were scored against him, yeah, out of the games that he gave up the 5 or 6 goals, which he gave up a lot of goals, especially in this last road trip, how many of those goals were deflections, and how many of those were really truly soft goals that he should have had? So I think that gets lost in it too, that we automatically blame the goaltender when a goal goes in. But if you look at the deflection or the double deflection, how do you blame Swayman for that? You cannot blame him for that. Yes, even in Detroit, he gave up that soft goal and then he turned aside like everything, so that's where, but your offense isn't scoring either. So even in a game where he only gives up 2 goals against Detroit, one of them was a deflection, one of them he should have had. So really, it's, if you look at it, it's a 1 goal game, because then they did score. So it's 2-1. And then he turned aside everything else, but your offense isn't producing either. So how do you blame Swayman for everything? I just don't see, you can't blame Korpisalo, you can't blame Swayman. You have to look at the whole entire roster from top to bottom.
And
No,
Gail,
so-
I'm
We
sorry.
are
I just want to say, I think that's what gives me hope that this is kind of just a fluky year for Swayman, is because of the defense and offense that is in front of him. The offense clearly is not scoring goals, and the defense there's a lot of new pieces, a lot of injuries with Lindholm and McAvoy being out. So there's not really like that continuation of having the same players out there all year. And that kind of gives me hope for Swayman in the next year coming up. He'll have a full off season to get ready, and I think he'll have a little bit of a chip on the shoulder as well, based off what all of us are saying as fans right now. I mean, I just don't see him replicating the same season that he had this year.
But also look at the year that they started Allmark against Florida, and they rode Allmark, and it wasn't until game 7 that they started Swayman. Okay. He then came in the next year and took the starting job from Allmark. You know what I mean? He had a chip on his shoulder then. So he does. And he always wants to prove that he's better. And if you look at the numbers that he put up in that Toronto series, and then, yeah, I know they lost against Florida, but Florida, and unfortunately, I mean, 2 years in a row, Florida bested them. There's nothing you can do about that. But if you look at it, every single time Swayman has come in, I truly believe that the turnover in the roster, the fact that he missed camp, and yes, I know we're now in March, but it's still a lot of, like, nothing has been the same all year long. There have been moving parts. There hasn't been any continuity. Sacco hasn't changed his lines as much as Montgomery used to do, but there's no secondary scoring. The defensemen have been rotating because of the injuries. You look at Lohrei, where he'll play, of one period of hockey is completely solid, and then he's making mistakes in front, allowing the odd man rushes, different stuff like that. So there's so much change. I just don't see how you blame it all. And believe me, I was not a Tim Thomas fan, which a lot of people are like, well, how can you not be a Tim Thomas fan? I always said that they won the cup in spite of him because of the defense in front of him. I think you take Chara and Seidenberg out of that equation, they don't win the cup. That's my honest opinion. It's not just Tim Thomas, but you have to look at the whole team. So blaming Swayman is the same hate that people have for Tuukka Rask, which makes no sense to me either.
Which I've always hated that take.
I think you need to blame it's the front office. I mean, when you're having the likes of like Andrew Peeke, Jordan Osterley, and Parker Wotherspoon, like that's 3 of your starting 6 defensemen in a game in January, late January. It's like, what are we doing right now?
But did you really think that they would be starting if Hampus Lindholm was healthy?
I mean, obviously not, but
if Charlie McAvoy and Andrew Peeke
We're talking a physical
Or,
sport. I mean,
no, I
injuries are
know,
part of the
but
game.
before both of them got injured, Andrew Peak was playing down. He wasn't playing on a top pairing. He was playing down, and he was giving you solid minutes. He's not a bad defenseman. You know what I mean? When he's paired with somebody, he's not a bad. But yes, Orsterly and Wotherspoon, the more he would play, the better he would get,
But
and he would come out of the lineup, and then he would start all over again. So that confidence wasn't there. But if you look, the Bruins have notoriously, from the history of the Bruins, have built their team from the back end out, from goaltending to defense and then scoring. And they never replaced the secondary scoring that they lost from Jake DeBrusk, the secondary scoring that they lost from even Patrice Bergeron and David Krejci. They didn't replace that offense. They were banking on the performance that they had last year from Trent Frederick, Charlie Coyle, Morgan Geekie. So they didn't think that they needed to bring in, they were trying to bring in bigger bodies to be stronger in the postseason to defeat a team like Florida. And Sweeney has said that.
the thing to me about Sweeney though is like you suck at drafting and you can't build a defenseman that you need to call up from Providence in the middle of January and you're signing Jordan Osterley to be one of your 6 defensemen. It's like that to me is where this is all fallen apart over the last 4 years is the drafting and not being able to develop
But
solid
they haven't
defensemen that you
had
can call up rather than just going off the scrap heap.
but they haven't had any good draft picks because of where they've fallen in the standings year after year after year. They haven't had the good draft picks to get those players. You know what I mean? And
Yeah, but
if you listen to Ryan Mougenel, if you like really pay attention to him when he talks about the players in Providence, you're watching Fabian Lysell, right? What have you seen from him?
Great hands, good at assisting. Um, Maybe not as much of a goal scorer that we expect.
Right. But he's gotten better than what we saw even in Providence 2 years ago
Yes.
because they've worked on his game. So Mougenel always says you need to marinate when you're at that level. If you want the Macklin Celebrinis, if you want the Connor Bedards, you have to be Chicago, you have to be San Jose, you have to be Detroit, and you have to miss the playoffs for 8 years in a row. And do you really want that?
No,
no,
I think that's a bad place to be.
not a place you want to be. Well, the Bruins aren't in a place that we want them to be right now. I think,
Great
there's
segue.
the biggest takeaway that I have from our dissenting opinions here is that, and where I do think that we all agree is that the Bruins are broken, and this year they've been broken, and the constant change from coaching standpoint, from a who's on the ice standpoint, plays no benefit into having any sort of success on the ice. It's definitely not one player's fault. It's easy to point at the person who defends the net and lets the pucks in the net. And some like he's had a bad year. Let's not sugarcoat it.
Oh
He's
yeah.
30, he's 38th in save percentage and 41st in goals against with a 20-26-6 record. Like there's no way to look at that and be like, yeah, he's done all right. Like it's just not been a good year for Jeremy Swayman. But hopefully some of the things that we talked about in terms of going into next season and let's sort of transition, Gail, because I think that the off season for the Bruins is where attention sort of starts to have to be shifted towards. So Gabe, why don't you set up some things for the off season, what we're looking at, and we'll talk a little bit about the Bruins from that standpoint.
Yeah, absolutely. Just a little rebuttal to Don Sweeney's. I've always kind of been in the Don Sweeney can't draft as well, camp as well, but he can draft some pretty good defensemen. He's drafted Charlie McAvoy. He's drafted Brandon Carlo in the second round. Mason Lohrei, who's still kind of to be determined on what his impact will be. But he has had some hits in his drafting past, more misses than I think than and I think that's where you're getting at, Josh. But Gail, this kind of is turning out to be one of the bigger drafts in recent Bruin history, I would say, just because of where they are on the draft table right now. I think they currently have a top 10 pick in this upcoming draft, depending on where their projections and lottery pick ends up. What is your confidence level in Sweeney drafting if they do have a big pick this year?
So one thing you have to remember, it's not just Sweeney. He has
Right.
a team of scouts that go out and watch these players and then report back to him. And then him and Cam Neely, they make those, you know what I mean? It's not, yes, Sweeney kind of has the final say, but
Right.
he's not out scouting. I mean, he is every now and again, but not all year long. He has his Europeans. He's got PJ Axelson out in the European scouts. He's got Adam McQuaid that goes out and scouts. He's got another whole team of scouts. You know what I mean? So so it's not all on him, number
Mhm.
one. Number two, I think part of so I don't know, I get a little weary with the draft because even if the draft is a hit or a miss. I mean, let's be honest, okay? The
Absolutely.
draft is a hit or miss. And like you said, he brought in Charlie McAvoy. Okay. When Charlie McAvoy first came in, people were like, what's so great about him? It took him a little while. Now, granted, he was learning under Chara, which was a little bit different. You know what I mean? So I think that that's part of it. And I think that's part of the reason why that it's hard to say where the Bruins are going to be in the draft and what they can do. And even if they have a top 10 pick, they're not going to make the team out of camp. They're going to go to Providence and they're going to learn the Bruins system in Providence because who in Boston can teach them the way right now? And that's part of the problem where people forget when they're like, well, why isn't Mikurloff up? Why isn't, why wasn't Lysell up this whole year? Why was Potter up and down, up and down? You look at the team in Boston, what they're doing this year. Who is going to teach them? Who's going to lead the way? Who are they outplaying to earn a roster spot? Do you want Lysell on the fourth line? No, you want them in your top six. So I think when you go into the draft this year, they're not going to probably look for defensemen. They're going to probably look because they have a lot of depth in Providence that they're working on. So they're going to look for offense. But a top 10 pick probably isn't going to be ready. They're not going to skate into camp this year and steal a spot from someone. Sweeney is going to bring in more free agents. He's going to look at trades, and you can't say that he's bad at trading. He
No.
fleeces
No,
he
we don't.
fleeces other teams. He
Well,
really does.
and I think Gail, that's like such a great point. I think like there's a lot of hate that Sweeney gets that a lot of times isn't warranted. And I think the hate tends to come from draft picks and his draft history, which, yeah, like, when you miss on 2 out of 3 guys in a row, people are gonna hold that against you. With that said, I'd say he wins most deals by a pretty wide margin. But where I do take issue with Sweeney, and I think this is something that isn't always talked about, is he continually traded all these draft picks to punt on the future to keep this team alive. And by doing so, we are now in a place right now where there hasn't been a lot of young talent that's been developed because we've been kicking the can down the road, just saying, "Hey, let's keep this team together." And we're now at a point where, hey, the wheels have fallen off. And granted, he did a great job at the deadline for the most part. I think candidly, I think the only trade that people have some sort of an issue with is Marchand, and Marchand was injured. It's hard to ask for more than what they got for a dude who wasn't on the ice.
Correct.
With that said, though, I do think it's fair to look at him and say, hey, did he mess up all these years adding some pieces on the margins and trading these draft picks where we could now have those picks that could be contributing at the NHL level?
But I will throw right back at you. Since he's been the GM, how many times have they missed the playoffs?
This
Like
year.
twice, 2 or 3 times. It's not many.
Right. Right. And he put together the historic team. He added the pieces to the historic team. A lot of them were in place with Chiarelli, but he added pieces for that historic team. They didn't get it done. They didn't get it done. So then he's up against the cap and he got, you know what I mean? And so when you look at that part of it, what was he supposed to do?
Yeah, what do you think the not getting
Okay.
the not getting it done issue is with the Bruins? Like in the times that they've gotten to the playoffs outside of 2011 and why they have been in such a great position to get into the playoffs and are there year after year after year, but get into the big leverage, big situation games in other outside of 2011 haven't been able to take it home. Like, what's that thing within the Bruins that's prevented them from getting over the top, do you think?
So in 2013, a lot of people blame Tuukka Rask. Number one, Patrice Bergeron shouldn't have been on the ice. He had a broken collarbone, a punctured lung, torn cartilage, a broken rib. I mean, there was so much going on. And the fact that he went out there and played with his teammates, I'm not saying that they would have won if he didn't play, but that's part of it. He's not 100%. That's part of it. The other part of it is you look at the two plays where Chicago scored, that was Milan Lucic. That was all on Milan Lucic. It's mental breakdowns. So, like, and then in 2019, we can argue till we are, and I never blame the refs, but I'm blaming the refs for 2019 because Craig Bay-Ruby,
You can do it. It's okay.
Craig Bay-Ruby went out and cried and cried and cried about the calls, and all of a sudden it shifted. It 100% shifted. Now, they should have gotten it done in game 6 and they didn't. It never should have gone to a game 7. So who do you blame that on? I don't know. I mean, yeah, I mean, we can all talk about the trip. We can talk about, there's so many individual plays. As far as why they can't get it done, I don't know. Like the the historic season, the 65 win season, I still to this day rack my brain about how they didn't beat Florida.
Yeah.
How, because they had that game won, you know what I mean? They had that game won. Last year was a little bit different, Again, you don't like to blame the refs, but how you allow a goal when Charlie Coyle, was blatantly pushed into Jeremy Swayman, that not, you know what I mean? And Sam Bennett punching Brad Marchand in the face, So it's like, but those are two plays. They couldn't get it done other than that. So how, so that's that catch 22 that you can't really blame the refs because you had ample time. Those were just two particular plays that we're talking about. I think that Florida was bigger and more physical, and I think that's why Sweeney went bigger and physical this offseason because, and I had a great conversation with Mark Recchi about this, is that teams that are built for the playoffs, they just have to get in. And that's what Sweeney was banking on the Bruins doing this year. He wasn't banking them on being the top of the division or the top of the conference. He was banking them on getting into the playoffs and then being that team that was going to push the other teams around instead of being pushed around. The Bruins are slower than most other teams, but they did get bigger, which is a more physical presence, which is what you need in the playoffs. Which is why because Florida is not more talented than Edmonton. They were more physical than Edmonton.
Yeah, I mean Florida's been their kryptonite, and now you're watching Brad Marchand skate for them. So it's a double. It's a
Even an
double
assist
winning.
on saw that.
And Sam Bennett's a game-winning goal.
Hey,
So
that draft pick could turn into a first rounder real easily.
it could.
Hey, and before Florida, it was Tampa. There's something about in the water down in the state of Florida that just doesn't jive well with the Bruins.
But it's the same thing. If you look before that, it was Montreal. All those years, it was Montreal. And then the Bruins finally got over Montreal. And then, they got over Montreal and then they, obviously swept Philadelphia that year. And then they beat Tampa in the 7-game series. But it was always Montreal. And now, if you look at it, it's Florida. So, and even Tampa Tampa was up and down with Tampa because they beat them in 2011. And then they just went on their cup runs and they were just silly.
Yeah.
I mean, they were
So-
just.
So do you think the Bruins have that identity already, or do you think they need to
They have
formulate
the
one
identity,
already?
but they need the secondary scoring. I think they have the identity of that they can play that physical game and they can be really tough to play against, but they need the secondary scoring to complement that physicality. That's
Yeah.
the difference. They don't have both. Where in 2011, they had both. They had the physicality and they had the offense. 2013, they had the physicality, they had the offense. 2019, physicality, they had the offense. Now, I know that they didn't win in 13 and 19, but they did make it to the Stanley Cup final and they were a couple of plays away from winning, both those championships. 15 and 16 when they lost, they didn't, I shouldn't say they lost. They didn't even make the playoffs those 2 years. They didn't have that identity because it was at the end where people were starting to move on. The cap was starting to come up against them. Chiarelli put that team in a tough spot and Sweeney got them out of it. That's where all the no trades started. They started with Chiarelli, not with Sweeney. Sweeney just then kept going with them. But like the money that he put in, and he made some bad decisions. I mean, let's be realistic. Nick Ritchie wasn't doing it, I mean, there's
No
a
one's perfect, right?
no
No
one's
one's
no one's
perfect.
no one's perfect. So I mean, I'm not gonna say that Sweeney is the be all end all, but I would rather have him at the helm through this retool than I would any other
Okay.
GM.
Yeah,
And
and
that's
I
my
was gonna say because I mean, if you already have the Swayman controversy out of the way and you get him for a full year, training on the offseason, not having to worry about his little contract negotiations and the front office, that's what they need to do. And it seems, I'm gonna be the first one to tell you I'm not a big hockey guy. I'm the resident Sox guy.
okay.
So I know a lot more about the Red Sox. But with that being said, it sounds like this team's a couple of pieces away from actually really getting to that chip. And it sounds like one of those big pieces are, secondary scoring. So if Sweeney does that in the offseason with, the big haul that he grabbed in the trade deadline, it seems like this team's really primed to actually make a legitimate push and a lot further than a lot more people think.
And
Well,
there's 24 million in the cap that they can spend in the
Yeah.
offseason. So I think that's
right.
also something else that's getting lost in the sauce here is it's not just like the young
Lost in the
guys that need to
sauce.
get developed. It's,
All the
they can also
sauce.
go out and spend money and bring in professional players to help the players that are here.
And I truly 100% believe that Elias Lindholm will be much better next season.
Yeah, I think you
I
gotta
think
hope.
that he's having an off season because he's not used to, first of all, playing in the Eastern Conference. Because when he plays the Western Conference teams, you can see his game is much better because he knows the rinks, he knows the team, he knows everything. So when you get a guy that's only played in the Western Conference and then he comes over and new teammates, new everything, there's a new city, new everything was like brand new for him. And I know professional athletes, excuses, but I truly believe that, like, if you look at Nick Foligno, now, I expect him to put up better numbers than Nick Foligno did, but I expect him to be the way he was when he had Matthew Tkachuk and Johnny Gaudreau on his wings? Maybe not, because I don't think that Pasternak is gonna, I think that you can't break if you re-sign Geeky, you're not gonna break up Pasternak and Zaka and Geeky because that is your line. You need to build the lines below that. And so you need to get Elias wingers that he can feed the puck to.
No doubt. Gail, last question, last two questions for you.
Sure.
What do you think the Bruins do from a coaching standpoint this offseason, given the interim tag on Joe Sacco? And after that, where can people find you on social media? Where can they follow you? Where can they learn more about Gail and everything that you have going on?
As far as coaching, this is hard. And again, this is me, this is not NESN, okay? I have to preface that because my opinions do not reflect NESN's opinions because you have to remember the Bruins, Delaware North owns 20% of NESN, which is why you don't see a lot of negativity in the writing on the website because they own us, basically, right?
Yeah.
Just like the Red Sox own us. So I have to preface that. I personally do not feel that Joe Sacco is the right coach for this team. I like him as an associate coach. I think he needs to go back up to the top to the ninth floor and coach up there. Did I think that Montgomery was the right coach? I did it first. After he blew that first playoff series, I wasn't completely sold on him. And then the second one, I think that the team outperformed itself in the second season with Montgomery. And so then this year his coaching style was exposed. Um, I think that they need a coach like a Bruce Cassidy. I wasn't happy when they fired Bruce Cassidy. So do I want to see like a John Tortorella? I would if the team was ready, not if they're rebuilding, because
Yeah.
he cannot be around a rebuilding team. I think that you're going to see a lot of coaches lose their jobs this year, and I think it's going to be very interesting in the off season to see what happens. But I think them going outside the box when they went to Montgomery was the right move because they went outside of their normal Bruins carousel of coaches. And I think they need to do that again. I think they need to go outside of the Bruins family and find the right coach. I don't think Sacco's the right coach. I think that the PK got better once Chris Kelly took over, but then it started to flounder again. So I'm not really sure what's going on there. Um, I know that people are like, oh, get Pandolfo, get Pandolfo. He's not coming back. He's not leaving BU.
Gail, what about Mike Sullivan? I know he's signed with the Penguins right now, but that was an intriguing one to me.
I love Mike Sullivan. I was sad when they fired Mike Sullivan coming out of that lockout and brought in Dave Lewis. I don't think that they gave Mike Sullivan the although that led to Claude Julien, so it's like, it's hindsight. I love Mike Sullivan. I don't see Mike Sullivan leaving Pittsburgh. He loves playing, he loves being the coach of Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, Chris Letang. I don't see how he coaches McAvoy. It's different to coach him on
Yeah,
Team
conflict of
USA.
interest.
Yeah, I think coaching on Team USA is a lot different than an 82 game season. So I mean, in a heartbeat, I would take Mike Sullivan as a coach. 100% take Mike Sullivan as a coach. If you can find a coach like him, or another Bruce Cassidy or a Tortorella, John Cooper. I mean, those types of coaches that have been through the ups and downs, that you need a proven coach. You can't really get a new coach for this team, especially going through the retool, in my opinion.
So you're telling me Zdeno Chara's out? I'm just kidding.
I don't see them bringing in someone. I know that I know the Globe reported that he was already in a position, and Sweeney had to rebut that and say that they were talking about him being a consultant. I don't know how. I think in a way he comes in and starts working with the defense and eventually could be an assistant coach. I would love to see them get a Mark Recchi, or I wish they would have gotten Mark Savard to be their power play coach instead of Chris Kelly. And I get that you want to put your one of your best PK guys as the power play coach, because then they know, what to expect from other teams and everything like that. But I think that you also have to have that offensive minded person as your specialty teams coach. And, when Savard went from Calgary to Toronto, that was like a knife through my heart. Um, so, but I wouldn't, I mean, Mark Recchi is kind of floated around a little bit. He was an assistant in Pittsburgh. Even he was an assistant in Philadelphia. I know that Recchi would love to be a coach again. I don't see him as a head coach. He's one of those would be good on like the PK or the penalty or the power play, but definitely not like a head coach. I don't see him as a head coach. And I don't think Mouginel is ready yet as a head coach. I think he does well in Providence. And again, like I said, I'd like to see them go outside the Bruins circle.
Indeed, indeed. All right, Gayle, last thing, where can folks find you on the interwebs?
On Twitter, it's at Gayle Troiani. I don't think I have an underscore under my name. Hold on. I have my profile up on a different screen because
No,
I'm
but
dumb.
you got the nice
I got
script
the
going.
yeah, I got the at Gayle_Troiani on Twitter. And then you can find me on NESN.com, Gayle Troiani. I am also the same name on Blue Sky. I'm on Instagram, although I barely ever post there. Mostly on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it is where I do my most stuff. And with not knowing with what's going on with NESN.com, I'm not sure if you guys are aware of that. They're sourcing out to like a third party, so I'm not sure where I'm going to land in the future. So if that's the case, I am working on my own website. So yeah,
Excellent. Well, you're always welcome back here on the Boston Sports Brothers podcast. We really appreciate getting a chance to have a nice conversation with you. Not always the case that somebody who has a difference of opinion that's willing to come on, especially with five guys for sure. So we really appreciate it. And we all hope that you have a great rest of your night, and we'll connect with you again, hopefully with a much more positive outlook on the 2025-2026 season.
absolutely. And Sam, figure out a way to fix Raffy Devers.
Yeah, please.
Oh, we're going to talk about that. Don't you worry,
Yeah.
Gayle. All right. Thank you
And,
so
Don't
much.
worry, he'll hit 280 with 20 dingers.
And I'm
but-
curious to hear what you guys' thoughts are. I don't know if you've already discussed it. I don't know on a previous podcast. Have you discussed the Stephon Diggs yet?
No,
We're
not yet.
going to.
Oh,
on
we're
the
gonna
next
jump in on
episode.
that today.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
So you'll
I'll
have
be
to
curious.
you'll have to
I'll be
tune in.
curious to hear about that because I'm the pro Stephon Diggs.
I think that there's some internal disagreement that we're going to have to sort out ourselves.
Okay.
So
All right,
have a
I'll
wonderful
be
night.
looking forward to listening to that, guys.
Excellent.
Awesome.
Thank you, Gayle. Take
Thank
care.
you so
Thank
much
you,
for
Gayle.
coming
You
on.
have me, guys.
It's a
All
pleasure.
right, thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Bye.
All right, Gayle Troiani from NESN.
Great insight.
Yeah, I
Love
mean,
it.
look, I get it. Her job is to cover the Bruins and to, give a full-scale picture. I also completely understand what she said at the end in terms of NESN is her boss and the
Mhm.
Bruins and all that, and sort of, you're not going to go and trash the team all the time. So I understand, and she opened eyes in terms of, some different ways to look at it. Do I agree with everything? Certainly not. But it's good to have somebody who has their finger on the pulse of the team come on, and kudos to Gail. Like, not there more people like her need to come on and have a
Honestly,
dissenting
Good,
difference of
healthy
opinion.
debate.
that's what
Healthy
we need in
debate.
this world. Like people
Rico
coming
Boss
together and debating on their differences.
and
Like it's so
completely
crazy.
completely respectful, completely, like, you could tell we were not on the same page, but that's all right. Like, that's the way these conversations go. And
But at the end of the day, we're all rooting for the Bruins.
we're all rooting for
Yep,
the
We are.
Bruins,
yeah,
all
we're all on
pulling
the
for the
same team.
bees. All right. Well, we holy shit, do we have a lot more to get into? We're gonna rifle
Boy,
through it. I think we may mess around on the back end with this episode and put Gail where we would in around town for the Bruins. So I'm gonna give a little hey yo here and sort of restart us, and might mess around here on the back end. So
Good.
and now we're gonna do a quick documentary review. Last week we left episode 3 and 4 of the Celtics City doc. This is also going to serve as a time capsule, since this documentary is literally going back in time, recapping the Celtics. So episode 3, let's start there. Sort of the post Bill Russell era, the 70s, where Tommy Heinsohn takes over as coach. The Lakers Celtics rivalry really starts to heat up, and some of the other players post Bill Russell that are, numbers up in the rafters, so on and so forth, really started to come into play. So, fellas, load them up.
Yeah,
yeah,
let's talk about Havlicek. Let's talk about
yeah,
Havlicek, because I think like it starts there with
gamer.
him, and
Yeah.
obviously when they start talking about Havlicek, everyone knows that iconic call from Johnny Most. Havlicek stole the ball. Havlicek stole the ball. The best part about Havlicek in his career is that was early in his career, and for most players, that's a defining moment, and it's one of his. Dude was an absolute beast in the 70s, and he absolutely dominated. So Hondo was just freaking amazing. So I just would love to start with that and just talk about how great of a player John Havlicek was.
I think my biggest takeaway from episode 3 was, and I didn't, and I think this person is very underrated, unsung, is Paul Silas. I don't think people realize how
Hmm.
incredible he was as a Celtic.
Hmm.
He was here for
Great coach too.
he was only there for 4
Hmm.
years. They didn't have any. They had contract negotiations that failed with him and Red. That's why he got traded. And I think his record was they lost like 60 games or something. It was incredible. 200 plus wins to like 60 losses. And yeah, he was a gamer. I didn't realize how big of a Celtic he was, and I think that name needs to be mentioned more in Celtic history, more with the likes of the other greats. I think he's a little bit forgotten, to be quite honest.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point, Josh. And a couple things I liked from episode 3. I watched it so long ago, so it's kind of hard to recall it. But compare the JoJo White commentary and how his family was neighbors with Jason Tatum's
Oh yeah.
family in St. Louis, and it's just like blew my mind that like Tatum is now where he is as a superstar for the Celtics, and he was so close to well, maybe not JoJo White directly, or maybe a little bit towards the end, but his family directly, and how much that kind of maybe propelled him into the spot where he is now. That was really cool.
It was really cool to see JoJo White's widow talking about the fact that, after he died and they had the patch on, the shoulder on the jersey, it was Tatum's rookie year. And Tatum, you know, thought it was only right that he would share that with her. And she said like it's one of her most cherished
Yeah.
possessions. And it's not about like it's about the gesture, not actually about the jersey. And I think that is like the special thing. And I think it also just speaks to Jason Tatum's character. And I think he gets shit on a lot of time because he's not flamboyant. He's not like one who's out there, being in the news. But these are the things you don't hear about him. And
Mhm.
I think this is what makes him such a special person, let alone a special player.
He is a special dude.
And a true Celtic.
I have one other, maybe two other takeaways. One other takeaway was in the 70s. I didn't realize that. I mean, I did realize, but I didn't realize that how much more of a Bruins town like that Boston was. It truly was a Bruins city. And there's the three guys, Bob Ryan, Shaughnessy, and I forget the
Lee
other writer's
Montville.
name.
Lee Montville.
Lee Montville, and they're all talking and they're discussing that, and the parade was incredible that you see the Celtics win their parade, and then the next year, the following year, the Bruins won their parade was like 5 times as many people. So just goes to show you how big of a Bruins city this really was. But I think it has transitioned obviously, and we'll find out more so in the years and then more episodes to come that it transitions into a Celtics town too.
Last thing about episode 3, just because I don't think we can talk about it without glossing over it, is the busing situation
Yes.
in Boston in the 70s. And I think like Boston definitely has a difficult history with racism and segregation, and it was designed to be a segregated city the way it was set up. And so the Celtics obviously played a role in trying to help people, like, to talk about the benefits of the busing and everything that happened there. And I just think it's a hard it's a hard moment in Boston's history to talk about. And certainly as all of us did not grow up in that era, it's hard for us to think about Boston in that way, but it's very much a part of our history. So
It's been educational.
It has
Oh,
been educational.
super.
And I think the other last thing too, and I think it would be remiss if we didn't mention Dave Cowens, who was just a beast. And I think just talking about racism and the way things were viewed in Boston, you had one of the all-time greats in Bill Russell, and people wouldn't show up to watch the Celtics. And Josh, you alluded to the championship parades. You get someone like Dave Cowens that comes in, and it started drawing more eyeballs. And Bob Ryan put it very well. He was like, is it, do you think the fact he was white played a role? Yeah, it's sad, but it's true. Compared to Bill Russell, it kind of was one of the things that brought more eyeballs to the Celtics and started to move them a little bit more. I wouldn't even say ahead of the Bruins, but at least getting closer to being a peer of theirs.
Yeah, Tom Satch Sanders also does some incredible community work at the Boys and Girls Club and
Hmm.
bridging that racial gap in Boston. So big shout out to him. Cowens feels like he would have been a deadhead nowadays and like just had that kind of mentality. So that was my takeaway from that. Let's move right into episode 4. Let's move quickly here with episode 4. I think this starts to get into the part of the Celtics where our knowledge and our historical sort of understanding of the team really starts to increase, where the team drafts Larry Bird, Mikhail and Robert Parrish. Chief come over to the squad, and in the early 80s they start to get back to their winning ways. Certainly the Bird Magic rivalry. The funniest part of my viewing of episode 4 was when they got Robert Parrish and they took him over to Hellenic College for the practice facility, and he was like, "What the fuck is this shit?" And it's like just a dump of a Division III college that they're practicing at, and you look at the Auerbach Center now, it's just like a complete paradigm shift from that standpoint. So episode 4, any takeaways from that one, fellas?
Can we just talk about how amazing Red was as a general manager and team builder? Like, I don't know if anyone is as close to as good as he was for three plus decades, just putting championship team out there and being able to rebuild on the fly. Like, just want to give kudos to him. Like, what a fucking legend.
I think Brad Stevens is coming for his ass.
Mhm.
Brad Stevens has got a
hoping-
lot of work to do
I'm
to get
hoping
close to
so.
being in the same
I'm hoping
conversation.
so.
Lot of
Yeah.
work.
Yeah.
I'm with Sam. I'm hoping that he can even be in the same breath, because that means Brad Stevens has done some excellent work.
Absolutely.
And for me, it just brings me back a lot of, I had talked to you guys about this before, but, some of my earlier memories, one of my first babysitters was a huge Celtics fan. There was Celtics memorabilia everywhere. And for me, some of my very first memories are of seeing that, super bright fluorescent green parquet floor. And so for me, it was a lot of nostalgia, definitely.
No doubt. Well, he just disappeared. Now he's back. He was just getting himself ready for his favorite segment of the week. Biggie, no
Wait,
one can
what?
see what the fuck you're
What is
holding.
going on?
Dude, we know you're holding
I
something.
have this
up.
great Celtics I have this great Celtics poster, Josh.
Put
You
it
know the one that used to
closer.
be?
Put it close
I
to
don't think it's
your
gonna pop
camera.
up. I don't think it's
Oh
gonna
my
pop up
God.
because of the background.
Oh, you're not.
There you go.
Disappeared.
Just get rid of your background for a
gotta-
minute.
Yeah,
Get
it's
rid of your
okay.
background.
It's okay.
Call in R2S2 to help you, please. My goodness.
Hey.
Well, help yourself now, because it's your time of the week. The next week's episode will be more on the 80s and the Celtics as well, so we'll really dive into more of that. But Big E, take it away.
Yeah, it's the best segment of the week. My favorite time. It's time to talk about the things that suck, the things that we hate, the things that are just terrible, the things that we go, yeah, oh, and the things that are stupendous, fantastic, wondrous, the things that make us go, oh yeah. It's time for yeah, oh, and oh yeah. Who's
Oh,
gonna take
yeah.
it away?
I'm going to take it away here. And he's been waiting in the background on this episode recording for almost a fucking hour and a half, which I apologize, Bernie. But
Snaps.
Adam Bernstein, come on to camera, come on to
Snaps.
greet the bros here so everyone can see Bernie
What's
is
going
with
on,
us.
brother?
Unmuted, ready to roll. So, as I
He was probably
explained
itching when we were talking about the Giants,
at the
right?
beginning,
Oh yeah.
at the beginning of the episodes, Bernie was in the same fraternity with myself, Kraz, and Gabe, not at the same time, but at the same place at URI. So Bernie and I and these fellows have been connected. And Bernie also works at Maddog Radio, SiriusXM, as a producer on the Adam Shine show, correct?
Yes, so I'm sort of what you call a floater right now, very entry level. I interned for Adam Shine. I've been working with him for about a year now. But I also, I guess you'd call kind of dabble with NBA radio and kind of sort of get my feet wet in a lot of different areas. I do a lot of games, but I'm slowly transitioning to becoming an associate producer on more shows. So yeah, I've worked with Adam Shine, I've worked with Beetle and Decker, Michelle Beetle and Cody Decker. And I've gotten to know the NBA guys very well as well. And Brian Scalabrine being one of our great hosts, so I'm sure you guys are big fans of as well.
We love the White Mamba.
Oh yeah,
Big fans of Scal. Bernie, thank you so much. Bernie saw our video talking about the Mad Dog lunch and Gresh's story about that and was like, hey, that's my boss. And we're like, Gresh is your boss? He's like, no, Mad Dog is like, oh shit. All right. So Bernie, you got a sense of the show here. Give us any takes as you sort of talked about headlines, yeah, ohs, oh yeahs, anything you want to get off your chest here, anything you want to shove in our pipe when it comes to, obviously you're a New Yorker, so 60 to 120 seconds, the floor is yours, and then we'll wrap up oh yeah and yeah oh and take this bus home.
Yeah, I mean, my oh yeahs are definitely the Yankees. I know it's a sore topic. I'm an enemy territory
bats.
to speak right now, but we got the torpedo bats, as you mentioned. Things are looking great. Things are looking bright. I tweeted out the best offseason addition was the torpedo bat. It wasn't re-signing Juan Soto. So yeah, I mean, things are looking great. Obviously, we're 3 games in, so I don't want to get myself too excited just yet. It's a long season ahead. But definitely happy that baseball is back. It means the weather's going to start getting warmer soon. It was like 80 degrees here in New York 2 days ago, Saturday, as we record this. So definitely excited about the warm weather and baseball being back. My yeah ohs. I don't have too many. I mean, life is good. I guess it's that I'm still a Giants fan, and you guys were shitting on the Giants for that segment at the end there. But yeah, I mean, it should be interesting. The draft is scaring me as we get closer. I write for the New York Giants, a Giants site on Fansided as well. So definitely covering the draft and some of their offseason additions as well. And it scares the shit out of me because I have no idea what they're doing, but I also feel like they're not too bad because they're improving the roster. So I guess I'll stick with that for now. Otherwise, I need Jalen Brunson back, for sticking with the sports because, it's been brutal without him, but I think we're managing just fine.
Hey, Adam,
I think the Giants are going to surprise a lot of people. I think they're really going to surprise a lot of people. Malik Neighbors is a baller. Tyrone Tracy is a great player that I think is underrated going into this upcoming year. And Russ is going to be okay. So I don't think they're going to be terrible. I think honestly, if people are going and saying, oh, they're going to tank for Arch, they're going to tank for next year, they're not going to be bad enough this year to get a top pick again. So unless they punt it this year and trade it to someone that they think will be bad next year, I don't see any way that they're going to be in the top 5 next year.
We'll see. Gabe, you had to take that.
I was just going to ask Adam if he could get a torpedo bat for Devers.
Please. We might have to ship a few up to Boston, so we'll get those in about a week or two for you guys.
Not for nothing, but they're not the only team using those bats. There are a lot of other teams using those bats.
The Twins, and I noticed the Braves also put in an order for them as well. So don't. and I will say one more thing on the
Tampa Bay. No, there's a couple of players from Tampa Bay using the bats right now too as well. So
I will say one more thing. Aaron Judge is not one of the Yankees using the torpedo bat. So no Judge slander is allowed.
The thing about Aaron Judge is
he said I'm good enough. I don't need that thing.
Exactly. good.
I mean, to me, what's the difference between a torpedo bat and a deflated football? I mean, what are we talking about? Why is the outrage?
It's legal, right?
Where's the where's the discourse? Thank God
Hey,
for
you want
Dave
to what?
Portnoy.
Oh yeah, to the nerd that came up with the idea of the
Oh,
torpedo bat.
fuck that.
You want to what?
It's from
No,
MIT.
no.
MIT
Yeah,
guy.
no. I mean, what's like? Why do we have a problem with innovation in baseball? I feel like it's the only sport that is so against anything different. And you want to what? It's completely legal. MLB is on board with it. You want to? I give kudos to the Yankees for trying something different that is within the rules. So that'll probably be the only time you'll ever hear me give kudos to the Yankees. But
Clip
you want
that.
they did
I'll clip
they did
that.
something.
Yeah,
They
please.
did something.
Yeah.
I want
Big
like
E, New York, Pinstripe E.
What about like a nunchuck bat? Like you just fucking like
Grace and
What is
Rob
this,
down
Wii
in
Sports?
Jersey are gonna love
Yeah.
this clip.
Maybe.
So
All right. We had a couple oh yeahs and yeah-ohs. Let me put these out on the table and anybody can comment on them. Gabe, you can go ahead too, buddy. It's okay.
I'm
Go
ready.
ahead.
Well, what? In the NCAA tournament on the women's side,
Yes.
Juju Watkins going down with the ACL tear.
terrible.
Out
Terrible.
for remainder of the tournament, obviously. Possibility of being out for next year. Just an absolutely awful injury to a up and coming superstar who would have been, I mean, still going to be in the WNBA, but this just kind of just puts a little damper on that tournament a little bit.
No doubt. It sucks, and she's a top player in that sport, obviously, in college basketball, going up against UConn in a game that tips off in about 15 minutes from now. So what would have been an unbelievable battle against her and Paige Beckers, we don't get to see, unfortunately. But
Page buckets.
yeah, rooting for UConn now. I think the door's kind of open for them to get into the Final Four and make a run at it. So would certainly put a bow on Becker's career at UConn. Not something she's been able to accomplish yet. So two other ones. We had Scottie Pippen's son transferring, but I really think it's the is the NIL in the transfer portal opening in the middle of the tournament. Like, what a fucking ridiculous thing to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So
I saw something like the entire roster of Indiana is in the transfer portal, and like I know that they weren't a good team this year, but like they legitimately got a new head coach, and 3 days later they have no one on the team. So
well, it's the Archie connection, Indiana and it seems to be a trend. I mean, I don't know. The entire team is in the portal, so
Rams just had one of their better players go in the portal, and doesn't look like anybody wants to come to Kingston, but
Connor Dubsky
can get you some free drinks
always
at the
right.
Coast Guard house or something. I mean,
Jimmy
we'll get you to the front of the line at Ocean Mist. Like, please, somebody come to
Ticket Tuesday,
play
like that.
basketball.
Go around back.
Saturdays now. Bernie can tell you all about the Saturdays at Ocean Mist, Kraz. So, things have changed just a little. And Lasso, a good one here. Ryan Leonard of Boston College makes his NHL debut with the Capitals going up against the Bruins. That's a game taking place tomorrow night. So shout out to the local kid, Ryan Leonard from Amherst, Massachusetts, making his NHL debut tomorrow. Great to see.
Yeah. Speaking of the Capitals, I got one more and I just would love to give an to Ovechkin. I know that he's on pace for trying to get to the record, which he hopefully will get in the regular season, if not in the postseason, with them going on at least hopefully a good run. But I also want to give a shout out to him for making sure at the end of the game against Minnesota that he grabbed his entire team and said, no, you guys don't go in the locker room. This is the last time we're playing against Marc-Andre Fleury. Everyone line up and shake this dude's hand. Just like what a class act for him to do that, and what the respect that he's shown to one of the best goaltenders to play the game. I just thought that was really cool. And that's one of those things I think that like can only happen in hockey and makes hockey such a special sport.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nice Canadian flair on the name there.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
McFlurry. All right. You know where you can get a McFlurry at a rest stop on the Mass Pike. And that's
just make sure it's not down.
Where the Pike takes us home. Celtics, a couple games throughout the week versus Memphis tonight, Heat, Suns, and Wizards. And the Bruins take on the Caps, Montreal, Carolina, and Buffalo, but nobody gives a shit. And the Red Sox
lose every game.
The Red Sox have two more against Baltimore, and then they open up the home stretch of the season Friday afternoon against the St. Louis Cardinals. So
let's hope that they don't lose every game.
Oh, God willing.
Seriously.
So that's going to do it. A long, great episode of the Boston Sports Brothers podcast. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Thank you, Bernie, for being with us. Bernie's going to be a mainstay on the show moving forward, hopefully being with us for multiple episodes and helping with behind the scenes. So you'll be hearing more from him. I mean, what better thing to have than somebody who literally does this full time. So we can't thank you enough, Bernie. We're really excited to work with you too. So, gentlemen, any parting words? Otherwise, it's time to go.
Bus is leaving.
The bus is leaving the station.
The bus is left.
I need your signature words.
J-Matt's bus left about 7:45. But
Near.
All right, near, far,
near.
wherever you are. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.
See you, everyone.